In the midst of intergalactic war, a conspiracy lurks in the darkness, pulling strings on both sides. Oblivious to the shadowy hands guiding their actions, our heroes fight valiantly for good, or so they think. Welcome to Every Show Ever. I'm Ken, and my mission is to watch every show. Ever. So that you don't have to. Although, this week I am a little underqualified to talk about the show that we've decided, so I am joined by Phoebe, Matt, and Rachel, and Phoebe has roped in Jake from our Studies in Intergalactic Policy podcast to help us talk about Star Wars The Clone Wars, the animated series which is now on Disney+. Hi, everyone.
Very excited to be here.
Hello.
Hi. What's up?
So this one, I know I come in a lot with the, I watched this show while it was airing on television. I did not with this one. I watched every episode of The Clone Wars I had a friend who had them all on DVD, and then he uploaded them to the internet to he had a folder that he shared them with, and I had to download all of them from the folder.
Phoebe, that's illegal.
No, it's not.
Well, we can just cut that out.
I don't see any evidence.
I watched it when it aired. I watched the episodes as they came out, and then I just kind of tapered off watching them until I heard that Disney Plus was making the final season, and then I was like, oh, I should get back on and see what was going on. So then I finished it out, and then I kind of started back at the beginning and rewatched it, and it was funny because I thought the first time I was like, I don't think I got that far, and then I watched the whole season and I was like, oh, I think I actually saw all of this before, but it was a good refresher before the final season.
Yeah, I watched it all with Rachel very, very reluctantly because I hate Star Wars. And so I was not
That's unfortunate for you.
upon beginning watching this show, but by the end of it, I absolutely loved it.
And that Matt's endorsement is part of what made me watch, because I also am not a huge fan of the wars. But you very much convinced me to watch
of happiness and joy.
The first 9 episodes, and
which are objectively the worst episodes.
And yeah, that's fine. I just the things that I was promised in the show. I was promised intergalactic policy and politics and space politics, and there was a lot of fighting going on.
Yeah,
but
that's all the good stuff.
So
and we're
that's
saying,
not the stuff that I care about.
No, the politics and everything is the good stuff, and the first 9 episodes are not the good episodes.
I think what this is a good segue into is how the different stages of the Clone Wars, because you can very much measure it by the seasons. Season 1, it's definitely just your average kids show. I think the first episode is literally just...
Yeah, they definitely come into it more than once.
I was like, Jesus, how many times are they going to put this on the floor?
So if you had to describe the plot of this show to someone who wasn't, maybe they've just seen the 9 main Star Wars films, what would you tell them?
So... Well, it's between episodes 2 and 3, everything that was going on during the Clone Wars that you don't really get to see. And I feel like it's a necessary part of that story, too, because you get to see the Clone Wars happening, not just from, Anakin and Obi-Wan and Padme's perspectives, but from, all over the galaxy.
I feel like it's really useful, too, for understanding Anakin better, because I know a lot of people's complaints about the prequels was that his story felt rushed, and it didn't make sense for him to just make this 360 turnaround from Jedi to Sith, so quickly or whatever. But when you throw in the Clone Wars context and you get to see him over several years, and you get to see all the stuff that's going on, it makes... Yeah. I think it makes it way easier to process that flip, and it makes it more clear.
It's
why.
It's a lot easier to see.
Because I've seen Star Wars. I know I said I don't like it, but it's kind of impossible to go without seeing it. And Vader always felt very much like a cardboard cutout of what a villain is. He's not got a whole lot of depth to him, and he's just that's the evil guy, because that's the evil guy. But then watching the show, he really starts to feel a lot more like a tragic figure, and you're like, oh no, I can see how he ended up there, and it's kind of really sad.
It is really sad. Like, and also see, like, and a little bit scary sometimes, because, like, they show the progression of Anakin very well. Like, every time he makes a morally questionable decision in the Clone Wars, like, there's a vague track of the Imperial March playing in the background, that, like, his eyes start, like, get a little yellower, like they are when he's Vader, and it happens more and more frequently the closer you get to the end of the series.
Yeah, it just does a really good job showing how somebody who never wanted to be evil and never thought of themselves as being evil or bad can end up there without ever wanting to.
You also have all this context of, like, Palpatine whispering in his ear over the whole war, and it's just, it really helps give that entire arc a lot more depth than they were able to give it.
It flushes out their relationship a lot too, because he basically doesn't talk to Palpatine ever in the first two movies, and then all of a sudden they're like best buds in Revenge of the Sith, and you're like, where'd this come from? But the Clone Wars explains where that came from.
And you get to see him training Ahsoka, who's a great character that you don't want to miss in the Star Wars universe. She's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love Ahsoka.
And she's going to be coming back in The Mandalorian, right? Yeah.
She's going to be in Mandalorian Season 2. We're all very excited. I remember when the Clone Wars first came out, and I wasn't watching it because we only had 7 channels, but I remember hearing about Ahsoka and, like, what her character was and how she was worked into the story, and thinking it was dumb. I was like, that sounds so dumb. That's not how Jedi get apprentices. That's not how any of that's supposed to work. And so I went into the show expecting to not like her. And now she's one of my favorite Star Wars characters.
Yeah.
She brings out, like, this better side of him, I feel like, than any other character.
Yeah.
And so it's really, like, her presence in his life almost gives you this sense of hope that you shouldn't buy into, because you know how it ends, but you're still like,
Yeah, I know.
But if you could just be this person.
And I feel like they also, by the end of the show, have a similar, or at least are starting to have, like, a similar disillusionment with the whole Jedi Order, but then they end up going such opposite directions with it. Are we in far enough that we can get into, like, some spoiler territory?
Absolutely.
Yeah, we can get into some spoilers.
I was gonna ask, like, what it's like other than... Like, what are some other shows or movies that this would be like other than Star Wars?
Well, it feeds into one of my favorite tropes, which I think I mentioned when we talked about Avatar. I don't know if we'll release this episode before or after the Avatar one. But some of my favorite shows are kids shows that deal with the consequences of war.
Oh, yeah.
This stuff, Avatar, Dragon Prince, even stuff like Liberty's Kids.
Or
Steven
even
Universe.
Steven
This
Universe.
was a banger.
Liberty's Kids was dope.
Yeah, I would say even Steven Universe for the effects of war and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I love a good kids show about growing up in wartime.
Yeah. Or just any sort of kids show with, like, darker, more serious themes that it sort of takes on through a very, like, fun, like, I don't know, like, backdrop almost? Like, here, let us distract you with all these fun fight scenes, but we're gonna make you think about the implications of war and having an entire slave army.
So, okay, yeah, that's a good segue into spoiler territory. Let's talk about the clones.
You mean all of the best characters in the entire Star
Yes,
Wars
undeniably
Yeah.
the most important part of the Clone Wars, both as a war and as a show.
For a show called The Clone Wars, and for so much of Matthew convincing me to watch it being based around liking the clones and how much I would like the clones, there were like 2 episodes focused on them of what I watched, and I
Of
was
the
like,
9. But listen.
and they were like,
franchise.
they weren't even like enough for me. But that's my own personal thing. I'm sure we got into season 2. Let me look. You guys talk.
Oh, you definitely didn't.
It's super inaccurate to say that there are whole arcs where there are not even like Anakin is not even in them, and it's only about the clones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think the arc on Umbara is literally, there are exactly 2 voice actors in the credits for all 4.
Because it's all clones.
For the whole arc, because it's all clones, and then whoever voiced
The general.
General, whose name is, this is gonna bother me.
Krell? Was
Yeah,
it
that one.
Krell?
Krell, yes, Pong Krell. It also bothers me that I can't remember who voiced him, because I knew at some point. But yeah, it's just him and D. Bradley Baker are in the credits, and that's because it's literally, most of the episodes are just D. Bradley Baker having a 10-way conversation with himself.
I never even thought about that while watching that, but that's really funny to think about how often the clones are just, there's like a whole bunch of them talking to each other, and it's just that one guy.
Oh,
Just him talking to himself.
the Umbara, you know, the
Umbara.
Umbara arc was heartbreaking, and that's when it got like real.
Oh, it
For
is.
me, that was the arc where I was like, this is like so intense.
A friend of mine once referred to it as Clone Vietnam, and
Yeah.
that's how I just think of it now.
It was so intense.
Yeah. That arc made me feel so many things.
There are so many. It's so good for so many reasons because it takes the time to flesh out the Jedi Order and what it's like and why Anakin was disenfranchised, and you get
Because all the clones have is each other. They're for the most
Yeah.
part, generally speaking, the only ones who care about them. They're the only ones who really see each other as people and individuals and not just part of this grand army of the Republic that is really not thought of as any more people than the droid army.
They bring it to light in so many different arcs in so many different ways, and it's just so satisfying every time, and you really find yourself connecting to like individual clones, and you've learned their names and all the subtle ways to tell them apart.
Mm-hmm. And you can recognize them
And-
even when they're in armor because they take the time to paint their armor with their own little identifiers.
Mm-hmm. And and so you really start to feel it every time one of them dies.
Even if you don't know the name of, even if it is just an unnamed clone that dies, because you've grown so attached to the ones that do have names, you know that they care. And you know that that's
Yeah.
still a loss, even if they're not made into a character in the show. And one of the things about the clones is because they are considered generally a lot more disposable, they do not get the same named character protection that most characters in most shows get. Like, just because a clone
Yeah.
is developed and has a name does not mean that that character is not going to die. So there is never a point where you feel safe for any of them.
Oh, absolutely not. Like, most of the clones that have names and that you will get attached to over the course of this show die. Almost all of them.
Yeah. Like, Hardcase was one of my favorites, and he died in the Umbara arc, and it ripped my heart out.
The Clone Wars does an amazing job of being a show where you know exactly what is going to happen the whole show, and it still somehow manages to be super suspenseful and super emotional. At times even more so,
Yeah.
because they write the show.
Because you know what's gonna happen, and you, like... And everyone's so
And you don't want it to
hopeful.
happen.
You don't want it to happen! Like, everyone's so hopeful about, when the war is over. And you're just sitting there like,
Oh,
but,
no.
but you're not gonna see it, honey! It's a lot.
And there's a lot of great characters that are not really in the other movies that you couldn't just watch the other movies for. So like everybody likes Anakin and Obi-Wan, obviously. But then also
Right.
you get to interact with Darth Maul, who's infuriating, but he's like a good character.
Can we talk about how great he sounds for a second? Because
Rachel hates how he sounds.
I was not expecting. When I first heard him, I was like, "Oh my god, what on earth are they doing with the voice? It sounds so weird. He's so creepy." But it steadily grew on me throughout the show. By the end, I absolutely I couldn't imagine him sounding any other way. He has this like slippery like snake. It's like snake-like, or like it's like a tendril creeping into your mind when he's talking to you. Like no matter what he says, you don't trust him.
He could tell you the sky is blue, and I'd be like, I feel like you're trying to hoodwink me.
I didn't expect him to be so intelligent.
Right?
Mhm. Yeah.
He's kind of philosophical in a lot of ways, in the ways he talks about things. I don't know, just Maul being in it was a roller coaster for me the whole time. Because he was nothing like you would expect him to be at any point,
Yeah.
ever.
Because the only experience we have with him before Clone Wars is episode
Yeah.
1, and he
He's
says
got, like, one line of
one
dialogue.
line. He says, "At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi." Right? That's it. And then he just swings his lightsaber around the rest of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So you don't get to see like the character. So he comes off. He's like super like smart, and he's philosophical all the time. He's always scheming,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not what. Because he seems like this brute kind of villain, essentially, in
But
episode
it's
1. But
interesting because
you get to see a lot more of the character here.
Yeah.
he's a character that everybody definitely thinks of as a villain, and going into Clone Wars that you would assume is just going to be a villain, but he's very in a gray area for most of his appearance in
Yes.
the show. Because he's like, oh
Like,
shit,
He's,
I see where things are
I
headed, and I don't want that to happen.
yeah, like, I was trying to explain something to my mom once about the Clone Wars, and she got super confused because I was talking about Maul. She was like, "Wait a minute, why is he fighting the Sith?" And I was like, "Because he hates the Sith." And she's like, "I thought he was trying to fight the Jedi." I was like, "Oh, he hates them too." Like,
And you also had to explain to her that he's not dead.
yeah, exactly, yeah, but
Star Wars.
like he doesn't like either side of this giant galactic conflict. He's just trying, because he also knows that both sides are being fueled and puppeted by the same person
Who he hates.
who he hates. So he's just trying to stop the whole thing from happening by whatever means he can.
Which, if you kind of think about it, makes him one of the only actual good guys, because you can't have good guys on a side that is being puppeted by the bad guys.
Right. Darth Maul's the hero of the
He's the
story.
unsung hero of Star Wars.
I was also gonna say other characters that are great that aren't in it. Hondo is fantastic, hilarious.
Oh, love Han.
He's so funny.
Ventress.
Good space pirate.
Ventress Osage is great.
I love me some Ventress.
She's fantastic. She has a great arc.
Yes, she is.
The Mandalorian woman, also her sister.
Bo-Katan.
Both the Mandalorian sisters are great.
Bo-Katan and Satine.
Everybody's pretty great. It's got a lot of
Yeah,
good
there's
characters.
definitely a lot of fun characters. But going to favorite moments, definitely one of my absolute favorite moments from the show is when Ahsoka leaves the Jedi
That's
Order.
true. The
that
show
was incredible.
did something that I have never
Yeah.
seen any other children's show do, in which
Never seen any
I've
other
never
show
seen
do.
it.
Period.
she left the Jedi Order, and then she is not in the next season at all. She's just not in it because she left
She's
because
just
she's
gone.
gone, and she was for real gone. And I was like, the whole time you're like, oh, she's gonna come back because the show wouldn't just like get rid of a main character. That would be crazy, but it does. It just lets her go, and then she comes back in the other season because she's amazing, obviously. But
But even just the point of letting her leave the Jedi Order, because it's totally set up as that sort of thing that you see happens in shows where they're like, oh no, like this thing that I'm in, maybe I don't like it, and they're like, maybe I'm gonna have to leave, and then they're like, please come back, and then it's totally set up where she's going to be like, yeah, like of course I'm gonna stay in the Jedi Order, because who would leave the Jedi Order? But then she just does, and I did not see that coming at all, and it was absolutely incredible.
And I think a lot of that from
It's great.
an outsider's perspective is impactful because the Jedi Order is set up to be the good guys.
Yeah.
They are the objective good, the objective truth. And so for a kids show to call into question what is objectively morally good and what is bad is very rare.
And the Clone Wars does that a lot
And I
through the
think that
lens
actually-
of the clones, but that's really like a mic drop moment for the show, being like, are the Jedi good guys, like, at all?
Yeah, and like it makes a lot of sense then that based on the things we have just been discussing, like the final arc of the series follows Ahsoka and Maul, the only two characters who are like trying to affect this war from outside of it.
The two of the only characters
Yeah,
who
the
actually
heroes.
have
Yeah,
a
the
shot
heroes.
at doing anything actually impactful.
What about you, Jake?
Favorite moments? Hey, there's so many to choose from. This is so hard. I honestly loved I thought I was gonna hate it when it first started,
Is it
but
the Mortis arc?
I don't.
Okay, go ahead.
I loved the when they went to the planet with the Mortis arc. With where it was the light and the dark side of the Force, and
that was one I also thought I was gonna hate, but ended up really liking.
Because when it first started, I was like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Why on earth would there be physical embodiments of these things? That's completely ridiculous. And then I got into it, and you get to see Anakin being pulled in the different directions, and then of course it had Sam Witwer as the dark side, which was just fantastic because I love Sam Witwer and everything he does. And it just it resonated with me well, I think.
I think it was that was the arc where after I watched it, I had to pause because I had been binging it really hard, but I watched that arc, I had to stop, and then I just curled up in a ball and laid in bed thinking about the duality of Anakin Skywalker for half an hour.
I love the moment. This is such a small moment. Okay. Two things. One, I love the part where Obi-Wan Kenobi goes undercover as a criminal, and then he's actually very good at it. He's like, I kind of like being a criminal. That was hilarious. And then two, I love the moment where that guy is holding the explosives, and he's like, I'm gonna blow up the ship. Who among you will strike the first blow? And then Anakin just murders him, and he says, what? Everybody turns and stares at him. He just killed this guy, and he says, what? He was gonna blow up the ship. And then the Imperial March plays. That's a great moment.
That's a really funny moment.
It's built up so much. You've got these two pacifists standing there with this man who has a bomb, and he's like, which one of you will brand yourselves a murderer and ruin your relationship with the other? And Anakin is just like, or I could just stab you.
And then just the Imperial March. It's all very concocts to be a very funny moment.
I think I already kind of got into my favorite moment with their clones moment in Umbara, but there is one thing I do want to circle back that we mentioned, because I do want to talk about it, which is Anakin and Padme's relationship in the show and how they develop that, and you really see just how much it doesn't work.
Well, they're completely opposite ideologies in every way.
Well, I've said it before.
Go on, Jake.
And they have this whole relationship that was entirely built on the excitement and danger of him constantly saving her life. And when that isn't happening, you immediately start to see the cracks forming.
Yeah.
And there's literally there's an arc where Anakin gets really jealous because this other senator is putting the moves on Padme.
I want to talk about this
and
one.
he can't he's not technically allowed to do anything about it because why should he care? But he gets so angry and jealous and toxic about the whole situation, and he's acting super possessive, and Padme's like, yo, what the fuck, cut this out. He almost beats the man to death. And Padme's like, I need to take a step away from this relationship because I don't know what I just saw. About, that was Anakin, I need to not see you for a minute. And, but then, at the end of the arc, because, they're in a war, inevitably, her life is put in danger again, and he saves her, and so she forgives him, and that's their pattern. And it's a really bad toxic relationship, and you understand that, if there wasn't a war on, this relationship would end so quickly.
If they ever saw each other, if they had a chance to develop a relationship ever at any point, they would have not gotten married. But because it is forbidden.
That's the other thing, is most of their relationship is spent long distance.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about how he just lets that guy die.
Yeah, that's
Lets that guy die.
the
Lets
Jake
that guy
pin
die.
He just completely lets that guy die. He could have pulled them both up so easily.
And
At other points in the series, people
not
use the
strong
Force
enough.
to save people who are in the same situation, and he was just like, there's nothing I could do. And it was like, wow, Anakin.
It was we were watching Revenge of the Sith one time where Anakin's like, they're hanging in an elevator shaft.
Oh, yeah, holding two people
He's
by one hand.
He's got Obi-Wan slung over his shoulder, and he's holding on to Palpatine with his one hand.
And you're trying to tell me that Obi-Wan Kenobi doesn't weigh more than Padme Amidala?
And we're watching that, and I just remember saying, oh, he totally could have pulled that guy up.
I think part of what
Anakin, you liar.
part of what at least turned me off from the show, part of what not was turned me off, promises unfulfilled, was that every time I said, I can't wait for the space politics, Jake would say, that's every episode with Padme. And then every episode with Padme, I looked it up, I watched the first 19 episodes, so I got significantly further than I said.
Okay, that is a lot. But
That's
it's still
season 1, but still that's a lot of episodes.
It's not
Yeah.
when there's
There's just a lot of episodes in the show, actually.
It's still 6 hours of my time. Every episode with Padme is in the first season is not her doing anything politically. Every single episode she's in, she gets captured, gets imprisoned, and then she's like trying to figure out how to get uncaptured for the whole episode. And then Anakin shows up and saves her. And I think that really speaks to your talk of their pattern. And so, like, I know she becomes
Except for the episode
more...
where Jar Jar Binks saves her.
Yeah, except for when Jar Jar Binks saves her. Like, she's always getting saved, and I can see in her character that she is frustrated with that situation, but I can see how that echoes, like, her relationship trouble with Anakin, and with, like, who she is as a person, and how it, like, reflects back on herself.
And it's hard to break out of that pattern, because what is he supposed to do? Like, stop saving her? What is she supposed to do? Like, stop being an important political
getting
figure
captured.
who people want to capture? Like,
Exactly.
it's not really anything they can do in their relationship to stop that pattern,
Yeah.
but it just very heavily reinforces unhealthy dynamics in their relationship.
Yeah. And it's something I thought that the show did so well, because I never fully was able to grasp why they were together when I watched the movies. And then I watched the show and I was like, oh, this is why. It's this really toxic, unhealthy feedback loop.
Yeah. Where they always end on a high note of him having, like, just saved her. And that carries over until the next time they have a fight. And then she gets in trouble and he saves her.
And that makes perfect sense for what Anakin would be attracted to, because he's essentially still 12 years old. Like, he's been in the Jedi Order his whole life. He's never had the time to emotionally develop in any way, because he's just been told to suppress his emotions for the past 20 years or whatever it is.
Still reeling from the inability to save the life of his mother.
Yeah.
Right.
And I feel like that's one thing I do want to touch on real quick, is that it's so easy to forget, is that when the Clone Wars starts, Anakin is still 19.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes.
He is married to... he has a secret marriage and is a general in a war at 19. Like, no fucking wonder he's maladjusted.
Well, and, like, in universe, he is known... Like, he knows that he's the Chosen One at this point, right? And I feel like just the Chosen One archetype in story, like, textual Chosen Ones, like, if someone goes to your character and says, you're the Chosen One, that would really fuck with your head.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's like, of course
he's got
he
a
has to
raging
save the
God
princess,
God
right?
complex.
Oh, yeah.
And if he saves the princess, that means they have to be in love. And so that's like a really interesting commentary on that archetype and that story.
I mean, yeah, from the beginning, Anakin is set up to just be fucked over because he is a slave, and then he gets saved because he's special. Like, Qui-Gon Jinn's not even like, oh, I'm trying to save you, kid, because, like, you're a slave and that's bad. He's like, oh, I care about you and only you because you're special. And then he gets to the Jedi Order and they're like, maybe we don't want you? And so he has to, like, prove, like, how special he is to be let into this, like, cool exclusive club and not, like, be sent back to, like, being a slave.
Yeah, they say multiple times the Republic doesn't do anything about slavery.
Yeah, and then they're like,
Yeah.
also now you're 9 years old, you're the most special person in the universe. You had to leave your mother behind, and now you're never allowed to feel any emotions ever again. So forget
And you just lost your only
everything.
father figure, too.
Just to be perfect and special for the rest of your life.
Have fun during puberty.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a great show. It's got a lot of emotions. It's wonderful.
is an
Oddly
excellent
complex
show,
for a
and-
kids show.
It's very complicated.
Yeah.
It is very complex for a kid show.
If you like Star Wars, I highly recommend it. Even if you don't, give it a shot. Maybe you'll have the same reaction Matt did.
Yeah.
And just spend the next few months crying in a corner about clones.
Crocheting a whole blanket as a tribute to them because you love them and they deserve it.
I guess I'll give it a few more episodes and we'll see.
Maybe we should see. Okay.
We'll
Yeah.
see. But, of course, as always, I think what Phoebe is encouraging you as well is to form your own opinions. Go watch it yourself before you, send us all caps tweets to @critmassreached at twitter.com, on twitter.com. Or you can send us a strongly worded email, if you so choose, at criticalmassmediatv@gmail.com. But for now, listeners, I wish you a good night and happy watching.